Hello, everyone. Hello, Anish.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Bimbin.
Hi, Ran.
Hey, Sajay. Nice red sweater, very festive.
That time of the year, and all the you're competing for ugly sweaters at home. That's why.
Oh, okay. Okay, let me share my screen. Just moving around the window a little bit so it doesn't block anything. And open our PRs. Let me check the participant list. I think there's still people in the waiting room. Okay. Moving that window to the side. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks. Yeah, we don't have anything on the agenda items today. I know, Bimbin, you've shared a link to the executor cache proposal. Were you able to reshare that link with the appropriate viewing permissions for everyone? Maybe, like, do you want to go through that today?
I just post a new. Oh, I can post in face in Zoom channel.
Should I add that to the agenda after the PRs?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, great. Thanks. Would you be able to edit the agenda and just later I can navigate to it?
Sure.
Thank you. Yeah, as usual, let's go through our PRs. I think there is one blocker at the moment that Bimbin, as you were pointing out on the PR that I opened last week, the end-to-end test is kind of in a hanging state. Were you able to figure out why the test wasn't triggered?
I'm just curious why this test is passing in all the PRs except.
I think I also noticed it for, like, for example, I was trying to merge the Dependabot update. So I approved the PR. But again, the same message, like waiting. I was able to update the base branch, but it was still waiting for status to be reported.
Okay. Yeah, I'll check it later.
Yeah, one of the things I was wondering, like, Sajay, I'm not sure if you know, what type of billing or account do we have enough quota to run the GitHub action?
We're on the Dayslab account, right?
Yeah. I know, like, I went to my billing and I saw that I have 3,000 minutes of quota. So I don't know what is the quota for the DS Lab account. Like, maybe someone with permission can check where are we with quota.
Bridget, you can reach out to Bridget. She knows or can help if needed.
Okay. Yeah, if anyone have idea on why this is in a pending state, let us know, because some of our PRs blocked on this.
I think this PR is also a little weird. If you scroll up all the way up, yeah.
Yep.
Why does this have +0, -0? It's not even making any changes.
Oh yeah, it's because there is another dependent bot update at the same time. So maybe they have, overlapping changes. And then I resolved conflict on one of the PR, causing it to have like no change.
Yeah, maybe that's why it's not running, because it's not detecting any file change. So dependent bot thinks there's nothing that it needs to run for.
I see. But would it be also true for the get started? Like, I don't think it's smart enough to detect that this PR is only a MD file change. Would it be smart enough to say, oh, it's only a doc update, therefore no need to run the end-to-end?
I think that depends on how the workflow is configured. If it says skip files, maybe it's skipping those, but
Okay, something to look into. Thanks. Yeah, back to the PR list. Yep, working our way up. Binbin, the end-to-end test on ACR and AKS. I saw you have pointed out the secrets need to configure to the secrets that we need to configure. Do you have access to configure these secrets? Like, do you know what to set them to? Do you have the account to use?
So I have those secrets for now, but I don't have the permission in this report to set secrets. And also, as Anish mentioned, I can use account to provision ACI case. So in that case, I don't need all of them to be set up. So I think I need to update my PR first and then add those secrets as needed.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let us know if you need any help.
Yeah, thank
you. Jimmy, I see Samir, you are on the call. Jimmy submitted a PR for custom endpoint resolver for the AWS auth provider.
Yeah, I think he was doing some testing, but I think he's currently out of the office. I'm not sure if he's responding to these messages here.
Got it. I was just wondering, what is the scenario here with the AWS API endpoint and partition?
I will have to take a rain check on it. I can ask somebody else to have a look at it, but I will not be able to give a good coherent response here. So I'll take a rain check on it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Akash, this is related to the auth providers. Maybe you can take a look and see. I think overall it looks good to me. It's just adding some additional properties in the AWS code path, the auth provider code path.
Yeah, I took one pass at it. It looks pretty good, but I'll take a closer look. Yep.
Thanks. Next one, Anish, thank you for adding the issue templates. I see Binbin had a clarification comment. Is this being resolved, or do we still need more information on the environment?
So I think if you go to the files, I am asking for the Ratify version. Do we need to explicitly ask for the command line version? Is it different? The binary version, wouldn't it be the same as the controller version? If you go to the files changed, yeah.
Yep.
And then if you scroll.
And then would the Ratify version be enough?
I'm not so sure for now. I'll need to look into it.
Okay, so I think when we build the CLI, like the Docker build would also build the command line, right? But yeah, I don't know if Ratify still like have like a dash version. Like we probably just need to check if that is the same version as the image tag.
Okay.
Yeah, and let me know if it's different. I can update this one to include that.
And no, thank you for submitting the PRs for, I think I just merged one with the dev environment, dev container update. And I haven't had a chance to look at this one, but I think it's related to the plugin path. But I'll be able to, like me and Akash between us, we'll be able to take a look later.
Yeah, it's pretty small. Most of it is just adding test coverage around the, really it's one line that changed. So
Cool. We love test coverage. Cool. I see Bin, you've added this link. Are you ready to go through it now? Would you like to take control of the screen share? Or I can open this link and I can scroll through whenever you need to.
Yeah, can you have just click the link?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, whoever's adding the attendees, thank you very much. I always have a hard time to capture who everyone on the call.
I think Ajay is adding names.
Cool. Go ahead, Bin.
Yeah, so this proposal is on the verification without cache at the executor level. So the background is that Jimmy said that like issue Jimmy raised that the gatekeeper audit can have a lot of like requests to ratify. And in the current setup, we have like 60 seconds as default. And so every 60 seconds, each pod will send we will for each pod we will send gatekeeper will send an external data request to ratify. And actually, kind of we are still in a discussion if we should have the executor level cache. So this proposal will just focus on how to implement the executor level, not on the whether we need to have the executor level. So can you scroll down a bit? Yes, I think the basic requirement is that we want to store the result and also invalidate the intent, and also we want it to be like thread safe. So when I was looking into this issue, I think there might be some potential issues we will see when we designing the cache system. So firstly, currently the Ratify support a tag image, and actually the tag can be changed. So I think for the cache key, we should use a like image digest instead of an image tag. So I think it's just straightforward. We can just reserve a tag to the digest, or we can just enforce customers to always use that digest, not tag. And also for the cache, even though it's thread safe, so because we can have a lot of operations like read, write, update to the same cache entry. And if we want the behavior to be consistent, so we should define a consistent behavior. I think firstly we can just like I think we can just remove the update operation in our system, so we can just have get, add, and delete. So once we want to invalidate cache entry, we can just delete it instead of like do an update on this entry. And I think it would be easier to manipulate the like cache. And I think the most important issue is that how we want to invalidate a cache. So currently I have two options. One is that we can invalidate by TTL. So we set up, for example, like we set 60 seconds for each cache entry, and once it's expired, we just invalidate that. And but we know because Ratify is kind of like security product, so if it just happened that some image or some like certificate was expired before the like a TTL expiration time, and so the result would be incorrect. At that time, I don't know if we want to tolerate this like wrong result, or we want a like very strong consistency on the verification result. And another option is that we can invalidate by the event on by some triggers. So because we have a lot of like components and configurations in this verification workflow. So I think once one of them like got changed, we need to evict the cache. So for example, like if we change the notation config, or we change the like ratify policy, or maybe we changed the repository, and we should evict the according cache entries. But I think it would be much complicated to do that, although it can like give us a very strong consistency on the result cache. And the last is the question to like everyone. So do we really need this cache on the execute level? Because currently we have a lot of like cache in lower level. I'm thinking if we can add more lower level cache, because I think there is not much like computing in Ratify like verification workflow. If we can add more like cache, so maybe we can just avoid the executor level cache. And because if we add more low level cache, it would be much easier to control the cache invalidation for each like small component instead of a whole like workflow. And so can you scroll down here? So I think the design is mainly based on the invalidation. The first one is the TTL base, and as we mentioned, we just set a TTL for our cache, and in this case, we can have a TTL for each like image or each pod. So different pods can have a different TTL value. And the second option would be like event triggers, but in some system we can have like the component to push an event once there is a change, but in Ratify, I think it's impossible for now. So we need to build our like for example, Ratify has some watch updates logic. So in this case, we need to implement some similar logic for a lot of components like registry, plugin config, certificate policy, and trust policy. So once one of them changed, we need to invalidate the cache. And so, because I think it's much more complicated, so I didn't investigate into it for now. And if we do want this like option, I will take more time to check how we will do the update for each component. And so my current conclusion is that we can use a TTL-based invalidation for now. And if we do have a very strong like requirement on the like results accuracy, so I think we should follow the second option. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Bin Bin. Any feedback?
Yeah, this is Samir. I have more questions than feedback to get some clarifications on the ask. Yeah, if I may go. Yeah, so
Sure, go ahead.
yeah, so how many signatures do we think will need to be verified? If we just keep it to signatures as an example in a given second, I'm looking for some approximate that we need to say that, hey, we need to cache the data. I'm just thinking, like, are we concerned about the transactions per second or signature verifications per second? And hence we are saying we need to cache the results locally. I'm going back to the use case first.
I think Akash did a performance testing system. So
Yes, I can talk a little bit about this. So yes, there are two components to this. The first is we actually already cache the artifacts or the signatures the first time we see an image that we haven't seen before. So we'll cache when we get a request to verify an image that we haven't seen, we'll query the registry for all of the signatures associated with the image, and then cache that as part of the verification operation so that subsequent calls during, if you're using a gatekeeper along with this, so for example, during an audit interval, if you're calling the same image every time for a pod, you're not going to be downloading all the artifacts every time. However, currently we actually make a call to the registry even if we have the actual signatures attached, because every time we need a query to see if there's new signatures that were added. So that's why we make a single call to the registry to get the refers. So this cache is actually at the higher level so that we aren't making that extra call and we're relying upon some sort of cached either verification result, or we could even, like Bin saying, if we don't do it at the executor level, we could do it actually at the refers level where we're storing a cached list at a point of time that we've queried. So when we do that, then it's all in-memory verification processes, which should be very, very fast versus relying on this extra call out to the registry, which takes time. And even if that one call is, let's say, 150, 200 milliseconds, in a large case scenario, let's say we support thousands of pods with an audit interval, the way the audit works is that it sequentially checks pods. So even you can imagine if you have even 200, 300 milliseconds per verification result from Ratify, that all stacks up to become audits of hours length. So this is kind of one consideration where a cache would help. The other consideration is on the admission side. So when you have admission with Gatekeeper, Gatekeeper is going to be calling Ratify. Let's say if you have 3,000 pods that you're trying to admit, it's going to be calling Ratify 3,000 times, and you'll again have the similar issue. So if you have a cache, then it'll just immediately respond, and it'll be much faster to deploy. So that's kind of where the issue is arising from.
Got it. I just have one more clarification, Akash, on that one. So again, I am not a cluster expert or Kubernetes expert, that's what I'm asking. So when 3,000 pods are being called, but all of those pods are probably being asked to run the same set of images, assuming that's the case, that it's a scale up and they're deploying the service to 3,000 or 300 pods, wouldn't we just do the verification once for one of the pods? Wouldn't it be a higher level control by the cluster operator or orchestration service saying, I have 300 of the same pods, let's verify the signature once and good to go everywhere else? I'm trying to see what's your thought on that.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Just implementation wise, currently the way Gatekeeper does things, it's going to be by pod, so it's going to actually execute the constraint that you've applied per pod during audit and admission, even if it's the same image or a replica pod. So yeah, there are features that Gatekeeper has that are going to alleviate this issue, but as of now, this is the current state of it.
Got it. I think you've answered my questions. Based on that, I think I like the the document which was shared about caching it, and I think a TTL one is a good interim solution until we get more feedback. That would be my 2 cents. No more feedback. Thanks.
Sajay, I think hands raised.
I just added a comment to the doc. Do we have opportunity to use something like request caching directly in front without actually making any caching in the Ratify components?
Sorry, what do you mean? I didn't understand.
Nginx reverse proxy, request caching, data caching, anything like that. Because in the end, what you want to do is play back the same thing for a given TTL, right? So if you have 5,000 requests, there's no reason for Ratify to even cache anything for a very short duration.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
The other reasoning is that if you cache anything, it's all going to be in memory cache, right? But if you really think about it, we might have to end up offloading the cache even off the box or to Redis or something like that. Was that considered, or?
I think that goes back to the conversation where if we switch Ratify to like a replica set model where, you know, the ORS cache is actually distributed, then we would have to do the work of making it some sort of persistent shared cache. And then maybe this could tie into that too, but I don't think we had many conversations on that. So
this is just, I mean, I'm just brainstorming here. If request caching is an option, then I think that would simplify the whole workflow, right? You put something in front of it, and then it would take care of pretty much taking all the load from Gatekeeper, and Ratify itself doesn't. But when you deploy Ratify, you kind of go with something in front of it that would help request caching itself. That would change the model a little bit. So I don't know, we need to kind of like test it out, but just want to discuss if that is an option.
in that scenario, I think one concern would be the whole tag verification. So if the actual reference provided is a tag instead, we don't have the opportunity to actually resolve to the correct digest. So
correct, but that would be a different request, right? Like you come with the tag, and then the mutation should come back with the digest URL, which would be a different cache hit. So both requests would be served, but both of them would be from the cache directly from the reverse proxy, not from the execute. I just don't know whether it's feasible to do it, because I don't know what the cache keys would be here from Gatekeeper, right? So Gatekeeper is the one making the request, and if the cache keys are going to match perfectly, then you can give a response cache back with the set of results also. And that way everything is, even if you do a replica set, all those replica responses would be cached within their respective pods as well. So you don't do anything to do with caching unless you actually really have a scenario which might be 10,000 different pods with different images and things like that, which in that case, caching won't work at all. My concern is we can get super fancy with caching. We can do persistent caching. We can do file-based, lock-based, in-memory, offload to Redis, offload to disk, to many options. But if we can cache the request at the front, then maybe these conversations might not, we don't have to worry about the rest of the chain at that point in time. Unless Gatekeeper floods us 10,000 pods at the same instant where there is nothing cached. I don't know whether that happens.
That's actually what I'm testing right now.
Okay, cool.
So are we saying that we want to run a couple of exercises or explorations here? I think first one being like doing the request cache as Sajay proposes, see if that's something that could potentially work, then move up to maybe just the TTL approach. And then just basically run a couple experiments. Is that sort of the method we want to move here? I feel like going in a phase stage, and I think there's also some conversations we need to have with other teams internally, but just in terms of like, for instance, for the event trigger, it does seem like we would need to understand a lot more about kind of where we want to. It's kind of building the BMW of caching here. Do we want to start with sort of a small exercise with just request caching, Minbin?
Yes, I have a question on request caching. So how do we trigger the invalidation even for the request cache?
I think you can get pretty far by deploying Nginx and Ratify together in a pod and almost treat them like sidecars of each other and set the Nginx just TTL, just like the design says here, but do it on the Nginx config. And,
Okay.
and maybe you say the regex for like whether the cache gets hit or not is like let's make sure it's a digest, and if it's a tag, maybe we don't cache tags because we always want to pull that all the way through to Ratify because we don't know yet. But for anything that has a digest, maybe it's good enough. I don't know.
Okay.
I think you can get pretty far with that as an experiment to see if the idea is even plausible.
Okay. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
And thank you. What is the TTL we're going to start with?
I guess it's going to be start with some sane default and give an override in the template.
Okay, got it. So in our, it'll be a new value property in the chart.
Yeah, a more serious answer would be, what would be the time in which a signature can be pushed and the image be invalidated? That's a pretty significant time before some signature gets added or removed, right? It's not in seconds or minutes. I mean, it has to go through a signing workflow or maybe some kind of an additive content change workflow before anything on that image changes. So I think we can potentially start with a large TTL and then dial it down where people might want to. Sorry, maybe the inverse, where you have conservative TTLs that is enough to show a demo, like you push a signature and then the policy does pass. You don't want to have an extremely large TTL, which kind of can never, then the image would never get validated, right? Versus, but you don't want it so large, so small that if 10,000 pods do start up, it can hold that cache long enough. So even if we start with 10 seconds or 1 minute, that might be okay. That's just my gut feel. I mean, we'll test and figure out.
Gotcha.
Yeah, okay. I think then we'll have the next step for this item.
Yeah, I will add it.
Samir has a hand up.
Yeah, I want to go back to what you said, Sajay, about signatures not adding or removing. I think when we're thinking about removing, you're thinking about revocation, right? That somebody has revoked a signature. Is that the use case you meant by revoking or by removing a signature?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, maybe that's a dangerous topic to discuss, but we haven't decided how signatures will be pulled back yet. Cert rotation is another thing, and Toddy was talking about in the initial phase, we won't worry about cert rotation for now. But at least, let's say the signature is invalid for some reason, you haven't signed it with the right key, you go to Ratify and Ratify throws your deployment out, and then you add a signature saying that, okay, this actually looks correct. And then you kind of try to deploy. And if you do that in a quick manner, you don't want to wait for 1 hour for the cache invalidation to happen. So that's the scenario I was thinking about, just that your first one, you don't have a signature, and the next one you come with an actual valid signature, and you want to see.
Got it. Okay, so it was for the addition, not so much for the deletion use case.
Yeah, I'll take that back. I don't know what deletion sounds like.
Okay, and then the last thing is I wasn't able to pick up on the difference between request cache and TTL. It's only for my clarification. It seemed like request cache is if you have 300 pods, then only 1 pod request it and the other 299 share it. Is that? Could anybody elaborate on that?
The idea is to kind of stand up a reverse proxy that can do caching, so that if you're requesting for the same URL keys and from the same IP and things like that, you don't want to kind of like flood the underlying systems to go talk to the registry, pull the signature, do like spend CPU cycles on what you say, assigning signature validation and things like that. So the GET request with whatever keys that you have will match a cache key locally. And reverse proxies typically have a way in which you can set TTLs and all that. All front ends kind of like build this today. So that every component underneath does not have to write caches or invent caching. TTL can be baked into the configuration for the reverse proxy also. So we can say that the reverse proxy is deployed with the TTL of like 10 seconds or 20 seconds. And that way, even if a large number of pods come up, the response will be the same, saying this is the verification result, and the reverse proxy will do the caching for you.
Got it.
Make
Got
sense?
it. Yeah, it does. I'm just thinking about, is 300 or 10,000 pods a real practical number, or it is just a theoretical test we are doing in reality?
I'll leave that to the PMs.
Okay, because again, I don't have any data to say what's a real number, but I was just thinking aloud here, saying typically, I'm imagining here that you'll have clusters, and theoretically, one Ratify agent or will only be responsible for a handful or some number of clusters, and they will only have some number of pods, and 10,000 is not a real number. I'm just curious if you're thinking, if you have an upper limit in mind as to what number of signatures per second we should be able to verify.
I actually did have a conversation with Toddy, and I think I tagged Akash internally. We should publish some conservative number that says, okay, Ratify with 100 pods or 50 pods is an acceptable number. Anything beyond that post RC1 we'll handle. But that number is not yet decided. So input welcome. So if you folks have a number in mind, then maybe we should at least test with that. I think 10,000 is aggressive. At least for RC1, it definitely is aggressive. I want to be realistic, right? Like even Kubernetes didn't land with 10,000 nodes, 100,000 nodes immediately. It took time to get to where it is. So let's ship with some reasonable, acceptable end user experience, and then we can add these as required. Like, I mean, from experience from ACR, we've done caching also, like at different levels of caching, in memory, multiple services, Redis, storage pack, everything we've done. So I think it'll take time, but we can get there.
Okay, thank you. No more questions. I think I'll try to get some data on this as well. This is
Thank you.
a good thing I'm learning about, so I'll get the data.
Okay, thanks for the discussion on this, the executor cache. Any other topic we want to cover today?
I have one about plugin distribution if we have time, if there's nothing pressing.
Sure, go ahead, No.
Yeah, so we've been my team's been hacking around on plugins, so we've got some verifiers, and you know, we've kind of spiked out a store to see what is out of you know, a non-ORAS store that, you know, maybe you've got your artifacts in a SQL database or something, you know, what does that look like? Because we've encountered customers that do keep their data not as OCI artifacts because they weren't a thing yet. And so one of the things we run into is, like, it's definitely possible, but it's kind of difficult to get the plugins into you know, the Ratify container where they need to be. And I saw a comment from, I think it was you, Sajay, last community call, where it was really interesting. It was like, what if the plugins themselves were OCI artifacts? And so I've done a spike on that before, and I just hadn't polished it up to bring it up to the meeting, but it seemed like a good time. It's definitely possible to say, you know, or as push my plugin, chuck it up there, and then add a new field that says, you know, where do I get this plugin, and let Ratify itself do the pulling down. And we could even validate a signatures because Notary is built in, and say, we don't just pull any plugin, we pull, you know, kind of sign validated plugins. I want to throw that idea out to the folks here and see if that's, you know, I'm willing to put in an experimental branch and open up a draft PR and figure out, like, hey, do we like this idea? Is this a no-go for some reasons? Anyway, I just want to open up the floor to that and see what we thought. It really solves a lot of the problems. A lot of the things we talked about before about, like, oh, binaries are hard and this, that. It's really, it's not the communication between them, it's the distribution of them that's the challenge. And so I think this could be a good improvement.
the person who would have been extremely happy is not on the call. I think Jimmy was the one who was like asking, how do I get this thing? And he was like, there are different options here. Unfortunately, he's not going to be back for some time, right? So, Samir, this was actually Jimmy's ask of how to kind of distribute a plugin into Ratify. And it would be really great
Yes.
if Noel and Jimmy could collaborate.
Yeah, I'll check if anybody else can shed light on it. But yeah, I think we were discussing it internally some as to what are the best ideas here to get plugins. And I think we are looking at, I think I like this idea as well. If I were to just be the devil's advocate on why this may be challenging is the plugin has to be distributed once, and that's coming from, say, whoever wants to enhance the Ratify verifiers. That may be a different org or a team versus the team which is pulling the container images to run their microservice. And that may be in a different registry, so they'll have to allow for a different registry scope to pull this plugin, which is not part of their microservice container images. So I like the idea, first of all. I think it's a clever way. We should write it up. But that's the thought which came to my mind is how practical it is for application teams to say they will allow bringing in something else which is not their core application. Back to you.
Yeah, I think that's good stuff to be explored. I hadn't really put much thought in, do you directly download a plugin that's an OCI artifact from like directly from a vendor or a third party or a partner? Do you copy a plugin and sign it yourself and push it to your own registry? That was kind of the model I was thinking of, is you get a plugin and you stick it somewhere. But yeah, I don't. If app teams are the ones running and configuring Ratify, or maybe more sysadmin types are configuring Ratify, and then app teams run and have to kind of play by the rules. I've seen orgs in enterprises do it all different flavors, and so the answer is yes to all of it, basically. And so it might be interesting to throw some stuff at the wall and see where it falls apart, and see if it's worth picking up and running with it, or if it's or if we hit a blocker. I don't know.
To Noel, another thing that I was thinking is what you mentioned, which is the deployment time is declarative, right? Like the deployer can say what they want in some way. Is it possible during deployment time that we can inject this in some way, in some shape or form into the templates to say, hey, this is how you deploy Ratify with these XYZ plugins that need to come from there? Because the Ratify image is anyway being pulled.
Yeah.
These plugins can execute as a sidecar or something additional that Ratify knows how to kind of get into itself or wire it up somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking out loud.
Now my spike kind of does. So we have CRD support now, but the equivalent would be adding a new field in the CRD that says where's the plugin location, and then when you register it with the CRD, Ratify would be the ones, like, it's already got a connection to the ORAS store. So use that connection to pull your plugin down, and basically copy it down into a temp folder, a shared volume, or whatever, but something that the Ratify process can talk to. It's in a distroless container, so it's pretty locked down to begin with. But it would pull itself down and then execute it as a plugin.
Sounds really cool.
Cool. I will plan to. I will start an issue for tracking so we can keep the discussion going. When Jimmy comes back and things like that, we'll keep hacking on it. And I'll open up a draft PR against that once I clean up my mess, so that we can get feedback and see if we like the idea. But I think we'll see how it goes.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Looking forward to the demo. Anything else? Anyone? Xinghe, do you have any questions?
Thank you. None from my side. Yeah. Hello. Yeah. Thank you. None from my side. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. I'm just seeing who else is on the call. I also see Rajasa.
Hey, just listening in. Thank you. No questions.
Okay. Okay, cool. If nothing else, we'll get 10 minutes back.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Thanks,
Yep.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Mm.